The holographic display flickered, casting a cold blue light over the metallic walls of Commander Vox's office. He leaned back in his hover chair, watching the endless stream of data scroll past his vision: reports, diplomatic briefings, cultural analyses, and yet, it was always the same problem. Humans. The newest species to join the Galactic Federation, and by far the most perplexing, they had advanced rapidly, earning their place among the stars with an ingenuity that defied logic, but their behavior, unpredictable, volatile, emotional. A sharp chime interrupted his thoughts. "Another incident report, sir," said Lieutenant Quarks, his mandibles clicking anxiously as he slid a holographic tablet across the desk. Vox sighed, a low vibration echoing through his thoracic chamber. "What is it this time? Another diplomatic disaster over their bizarre reproductive customs?" Quarks hesitated. "No, sir, it's about their companions." Vox's eyes narrowed. "Their what?" "Their pets, sir, specifically the canine variety." Vox blinked, his stalked eyes lowering in confusion. "You mean those furry quadrupeds they keep in their homes? The ones that sniff everything and produce those awful high-pitched vocalizations?" "Yes, sir, that's them." Vox's claws tapped rhythmically against the metallic surface of his desk. "What about them?" Quark shifted uneasily. "There was an incident at the Federation Embassy on Earth. Ambassador Drex made a comment about a security officer's dog. He suggested it might make a fine appetizer at the upcoming diplomatic dinner." Vox groaned, his exoskeleton clicking in exasperation. "Tell me he didn't actually try to eat the creature." "No, sir, he merely suggested it, as what he believed was a joke." "And?" Well, Officer Potler broke his jaw. Silence. Vox sat upright, his forelimbs tensing. "She did what?" "She physically assaulted an ambassador, sir. That's grounds for immediate expulsion from the Federation." "Under normal circumstances, yes," Quarks admitted, "but the human government is refusing to punish her. They claim provocation." Vox exhaled slowly, trying to process the absurdity of the situation. "So, a human diplomat physically attacks a Federation representative over a joke about an animal, and their leaders defend her actions." "Yes, sir." Vox rubbed his temples. "I need to understand this phenomenon. Schedule an immediate trip to Earth. I want to see these creatures for myself." "Yes, sir. When would you like to depart?" "Immediately." Quarks hesitated. "And sir, perhaps you should request a guide, someone who won't, break your jaw." Vox waved a dismissive claw. "Find me someone, anyone who can explain this madness." The gravity was heavier than he expected. Vox shifted uncomfortably in his travel suit, the dense air of the human planet pressing against his carapace. The moisture in the air carried a strange mixture of organic scents, earth, vegetation, and something distinctly alive. "This is called a dog park," Dr. Eliza Novak explained, gesturing to the open space where humans and their furry creatures interacted. "It's a designated area where people bring their dogs for exercise and socialization." Vox's eyes tracked a small, agile creature sprinting across the grass, catching a circular object in its jaws before returning it to its human. "Fascinating. And you are an expert on this human-pet relationship." "I'm a behavioral scientist specializing in interspecies bonds," Novak replied, "and I suspect your Federation's understanding of human-animal connections is severely lacking." Vox's stalks twitched in irritation. "That's putting it mildly. One of your security officers assaulted an ambassador over a comment about consuming one of these creatures." Dr. Novak's face darkened. "Yes, well, suggesting eating someone's dog is possibly one of the most offensive things you could say to a human." "But why?" Vox pressed. "They are just animals, are they not? Non-sentient beings. Throughout the galaxy, many species domesticate lesser creatures for food, labor, or entertainment. No one forms emotional attachments to them." Dr. Novak smiled, an expression that exposed her teeth in a manner that, disturbingly, did not indicate aggression. "Commander, that's where you're wrong." She whistled sharply. A golden-furred creature bounded over, tail wagging furiously. "This is Rusty," Novak introduced. "Rusty, say hello to Commander Zarak." The dog tilted its head, studying Vox with intense curiosity before releasing a soft woof. That was communication? Vox asked, skeptical. Yes. And now hold out your hand palm down, fingers curled. Vox hesitated but complied. The creature sniffed him cautiously before pressing its damp nose against his skin. He's deciding if you're trustworthy, Novak explained. Vox retracted his hand. Preposterous? A creature with a brain the size of a Zorian pebble is judging my character? Dr. Novak's expression softened. Dogs are excellent judges of character. They can sense fear, aggression, even illness. They've evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. Vox frowned. But why keep them? What practical purpose do they serve in modern human society? Dr. Novak's gaze turned serious. Many purposes. Some work as guards, herders, search and rescue units, or even medical assistants. They detect seizures before they happen, guide the visually impaired, locate missing persons. Vox waved a claw impatiently. Yes, I understand utility, but that still does not explain why Officer Patel physically assaulted a Federation ambassador over a mere suggestion of consuming one of these creatures. Dr. Novak's voice dropped lower. Because, Commander, you still don't understand, but I know someone who might help you. Vox regarded her warily. Who? A human who wouldn't be alive today if not for his dog. Meet me tomorrow at the Veterans Administration Hospital. Vox sighed. He had come here for answers, and so far he had only encountered more questions. But something in the way she spoke, the certainty in her voice, unsettled him. I suppose, he said reluctantly, that I have no choice but to witness this absurdity firsthand. Dr. Novak smirked. Trust me, Commander, it will change the way you see everything. The hospital was eerily quiet. Commander Vox Sirach walked beside Dr. Eliza Novak, his stalked eyes scanning the sterile corridors of the Veterans Administration Hospital. The walls were lined with framed photographs, humans in uniform, frozen in time, their expressions etched with pride, sorrow, and resilience. This facility is for those who have served in human military forces, Dr. Novak explained as they turned a corner. Many of them carry wounds, some physical, others invisible. Vox's exoskeletal plates shifted uncomfortably. You mean psychological trauma? Yes, and that's why we're here. They stepped into a courtyard garden. The air was heavy with the scent of damp soil and freshly cut grass. A man sat in a wheeled chair beneath the shade of a tree. His gaze was distant, unfocused. At his feet lay a large black and tan creature, its head resting on massive paws, ears flicking with the slightest movement in the air. Dr. Novak approached with quiet respect. Sergeant Torres. The man looked up, his dark eyes flickering with recognition before settling on Vox with wary curiosity. This is Commander Vox Sirach from the Galactic Federation. Dr. Novak introduced. Commander, this is Sergeant Frank Torres and his service dog, Max. Vox's eyes settled on the canine first. It was larger than Rusty from the park, its frame lean and powerful. Unlike Rusty's open enthusiasm, this dog radiated quiet control, its watchful eyes tracking every movement with disciplined focus. Torres exhaled slowly, his fingers absent-mindedly brushing against the dog's fur. So you're the alien who wants to understand why we love our dogs. Vox tipped his head. That is one way of putting it. Torres studied him for a long moment, then gave Max a gentle tap on the side. Up. Instantly, the dog rose to its feet, its posture straight, eyes locked onto its handler. Vox observed. Fascinated, it obeys without hesitation. Torres smirked. That's what training does, but it's more than that. He understands me. Vox's eye stalks narrowed. Explain. The sergeant's expression hardened. He took a slow breath, his grip tightening on the wheels of his chair. 3 years ago, I couldn't leave my house, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. The sounds, the memories, they never stop. His hand drifted down and Max leaned into his touch, grounding him. PTSD, Dr. Novak clarified softly. Vox nodded, recalling the term from his briefings. Post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition suffered by those who had endured extreme trauma. Torres continued, his voice rough, as if unused to speaking of these things. They paired me with Max. He was trained to recognize when I was having an episode. He'd wake me from nightmares, guide me home if I dissociated, create space around me in crowded places. Vox tilted his head. Create space. Torres nodded. If I start feeling overwhelmed in public, he moves around me, keeping people at a distance, no words needed. He just knows. Vox watched as Max shifted subtly, positioning himself between Taurus and the rest of the courtyard. A silent, living shield. He's the reason I can be sitting here, talking to you, Taurus said quietly. For the first time, Vox felt something stir beneath his logical analysis. This was not simple domestication, this was something deeper. Fascinating, Vox admitted. And yet, is it truly necessary to form such emotional bonds with these creatures? Couldn't a robotic assistant perform the same function? Taurus's lips pressed into a thin line. I had a service drone before Max. It followed protocols, obeyed commands, but it didn't care. It didn't know me the way Max does. The dog's ears twitched, sensing the change in his handler's voice. He stepped closer, his large head pressing gently against Taurus's thigh. The sergeant's posture relaxed almost imperceptibly. Vox observed this interaction, his mind racing through every cultural analysis he had studied. This wasn't just utility, it wasn't about efficiency. This was connection. And for the first time, he understood, at least in part, why Officer Patel had reacted so violently to Ambassador Drex's comment. Vox exhaled slowly. I see. Taurus's eyes flicked toward him. Skeptical, do you? The commander hesitated. Not entirely, but I am beginning to. Dr. Novak smiled. Then I think it's time for the next step in your education. Vox's mandibles clicked. Which is? She folded her arms, living with the dog. Vox stiffened. You can't be serious. Taurus chuckled. Oh, she's serious. The Parker residence was modest, nestled in a quiet suburban district outside the city. The moment Vox stepped inside, he felt the presence of the creature before he even saw it. A black and white mixed breed dog stood in the center of the living room, watching him with unwavering focus. He's protective, Thomas Parker, the father explained. Just let him get used to you. Vox's exoskeletal plates flexed involuntarily. Wonderful, another one evaluating me. 8-year-old Jamie Parker giggled from the couch. Bandit's a good judge of character. The dog's ears twitched. Vox cleared his throat. I have been assigned to observe your family's interactions with this creature. His name is Bandit, little Zoe, the 5-year-old, corrected firmly. Vox stared at her. I see. And why do you insist on personalizing these creatures? You do not name your livestock. The girl gasped. Bandit is not livestock. Thomas chuckled. Maybe it'll make more sense after dinner. Vox watched as the family sat together at the table. Bandit did not beg or demand food, but lay quietly nearby, his eyes half closed, his body relaxed yet alert. The conversation drifted to space, to Vox's home world, to the Galactic Federation. Do aliens have dogs? Zoe asked, her voice full of wonder. No, Vox admitted, my species does not keep pets. The girl frowned. That's so sad. Vox blinked. Sad? She nodded. Who keeps you company when you're lonely? The question caught him off guard. We do not require such companionship. Zoe tilted her head. Then how do you know you're not missing something? Vox had no answer. Later that night, as the house settled into quiet, Vox lay awake in the guest room, his mind restless. A faint sound caught his attention. He stepped out into the hallway and found Bandit sitting outside Jamie's bedroom door. The dog's posture was relaxed, but his eyes were open, ears pricked. Vox crouched down. What are you doing? The dog glanced at him, then back at the door. Vox's mind whirred. Standing guard. He returned to his room, but sleep did not come easily. He had studied humans for years, their wars, their diplomacy, their technology, but he had never considered this side of them, the way they bonded, not just with their own kind, but with creatures entirely different from themselves. And for the first time, he wondered, had the Federation underestimated humans all along? The night stretched long and unfamiliar. The human dwelling was quiet, except for the occasional rustle of fabric as its inhabitants shifted in their sleep, the artificial hum of cooling units, the distant sound of passing vehicles outside. Yet, one presence remained unwavering. Bandit. Vox had spent hours studying the creature, watching as it sat outside the young human's door, ears flicking at every minor sound. It was not asleep, nor was it idle. It was waiting, guarding, protecting. The Federation had cataloged thousands of domesticated species across the stars, yet none exhibited this level of voluntary dedication, this unwavering vigilance. Vox turned, retreating to his assigned sleeping quarters. The room was dimly lit by a single ambient light, its warmth casting unfamiliar shadows along the walls. He had expected discomfort. The human-built structures lacked the environmental adjustments necessary for his species, but instead of unease, he felt something else, a sensation he struggled to define. He lay back, his forelimbs adjusting to the soft cushioning of the human furniture. His mind, however, refused to settle. The conversations of the day echoed in his consciousness. The human child's words, the soldier's conviction, the scientist's insistence that his understanding was incomplete. He exhaled a deep, controlled breath. Then, from the hallway, a sound. Not loud, but distinct, a soft whimper, a shift of weight against the wooden floor, a low, warning growl. Vox's eyes snapped open. His body responded before logic could process the situation. In a fluid motion, he moved toward the door, his camouflaged exoskeleton blending into the dimness of the night. Another sound, closer this time. A rustling at the front of the house, a faint creak of the door handle. The air shifted, Bandit's body tensed. Then, a crash of breaking glass. The dog erupted into a snarl, its body launching forward as Vox rushed to follow. Footsteps, panic, a sharp shout from the humans, then a single chilling sound that Vox recognized from the Federation's security archives. The click of a primitive projectile weapon being prepared to fire. Vox burst into the living space in time to see it all unfold. Two intruders, one injured, blood trailing down his arm where Bandit had latched onto him, the other still standing, weapon raised, aimed, but not at the humans. At Bandit. Time slowed. Vox's vision sharpened, tracking every movement, every twitch of muscle and dilation of pupils. The human father stood defensively in front of his family, his arms extended in a futile attempt to shield them, the mother clutching the youngest child, pressing her back against the kitchen counter. And Bandit. The dog, the animal, the creature, stood unflinching between the invaders and its family. Teeth bared, eyes locked. It did not flee, it did not hesitate. It chose to fight. The intruder's grip tightened. The weapon began to rise. Vox moved. Before the attacker could react, before logic could overtake instinct, Vox activated his species' natural defensive adaptation. An electrical discharge, concentrated and controlled, surged from his body in a calculated strike. The air crackled, the scent of ozone filled the space. The intruder's body convulsed, the weapon slipping from his grasp as he crumpled to the floor. Silence. Only the sound of ragged breathing. Then, a quiet whimper. Bandit! The dog's side heaved with rapid breaths, blood staining its fur where the second intruder's weapon had grazed it, yet, even injured, it did not retreat. The human father was the first to move. He dropped to his knees beside the dog, hands trembling as he checked for wounds. "Good boy," he whispered, voice breaking. "You're such a good boy." The human authorities arrived moments later. They took the intruders, asked questions, made notes, but Vox barely registered them. His gaze remained locked on the creature lying in the human's arms. This animal, this thing, had just chosen to risk its life for beings who did not share its species, did not share its blood, did not even share its method of communication. And yet, it understood something that even the most advanced civilizations in the Federation struggled to grasp. Loyalty, family, love. Vox turned away, stepping outside into the night air. His breathing was steady, his mind anything but. He had come here to study human behavior, to dissect their peculiar customs. Instead, he had felt something. And he could no longer deny the truth forming in the depths of his consciousness. This was no anomaly. This was no mere quirk of human nature. This was something far greater. And for the first time in his career, Vox's Zarok felt small in the face of understanding. The morning arrived, but the house did not wake the same way it had before. The scent of human food filled the air, but it was not accompanied by the usual hum of conversation, the playful laughter of children, or the rhythmic tapping of utensils against plates. It was quieter, heavier. Heavier. Bandit lay on a soft blanket in the center of the living room, his body still but his chest rising and falling with slow, measured breaths. His wound had been treated. The damage was not fatal, yet the sight of the creature lying there weak, unmoving, shifted something in the atmosphere. The children sat beside him, their small hands stroking his fur carefully, whispering words that Vox did not fully understand but could feel. Comfort, gratitude, love. The father moved with slow precision as he prepared food, his movements lacking their usual ease. The mother checked the security system multiple times, her fingers trembling slightly when she thought no one was watching. They had faced danger before. Vox knew the human world was not without its risks, yet this time the threat had come into their home, and more than that, Bandit had bled for them. Vox stood near the window, his back to the scene unfolding behind him. He did not know why he felt the need to keep his distance, why he had remained standing for so long without moving. The weight of what had transpired the night before clung to him. Not just the violence, not just the revelation that humans could react with such raw, instinctive protection, but the fact that it was shared. Bandit had fought for them, and they had fought for him. It was a connection that should not exist, a bond that had no logical foundation in survival. And yet, it was. The child, Zoe, suddenly turned her head, her small eyes locking onto him. "You saved Bandit too?" she said softly. Vox did not respond immediately. He merely observed the young human as she slowly got up and walked toward him. Her steps were small, hesitant, but determined. She stopped directly in front of him, tilting her head the way Bandit did when observing something new. Then, to Vox's complete confusion, she reached forward and placed something in his hand. A small, well-worn object, a toy. Bandit's toy. A simple, soft sphere made of synthetic fibers, chewed at the edges, frayed from use. "He'd want you to have it," Zoe whispered. Vox stared at the object in his palm. The weight of it was insignificant, yet it pressed against him with a force he could not define. He looked back at the child, and for the first time, he did not see her as a study subject. He saw her as something else. Something he could not yet name. Before he could respond, the doorbell chimed. Dr. Novak had arrived. The ride back to the Federation's Earth embassy was silent. Vox sat stiffly in his seat, the toy still in his hand. He had meant to leave it behind, had intended to return it to the child before departing, yet somehow it had remained with him. Dr. Novak drove with a quiet confidence, only glancing at him occasionally as if waiting for him to speak first. He did not. Not until the embassy came into view. "Why do humans do this?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. Dr. Novak did not ask him to clarify. "You mean, why do we love them so much?" she offered. Vox nodded. "Huh." She smiled slightly, exhaling as she turned into the secure lot. "You've seen the practical reasons, their skills, their intelligence, their usefulness," she said, "but that's not what you're really asking, is it?" Vox remained silent. Dr. Novak shifted the vehicle into park and turned to face him fully. "The truth is, Commander, we don't love them because they're useful. We love them because they choose us every day, every moment. They choose to stay, to protect, to comfort." She hesitated before adding, "And we choose them back." Vox's grip tightened slightly on the toy in his hand. "You call them family," he murmured, "yet they do not share your species, your intelligence, or your language." Dr. Novak tilted her head. "Does family require those things?" Vox opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer, because he was beginning to suspect that humans already knew something that his species had never even considered. The meeting chamber was silent as Vox stood before the Federation Cultural Exchange Committee. 12 representatives from 12 species, all regarding him with varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, and impatience. At the center of the chamber sat Ambassador Drax. His jaw was still visibly swollen from the incident, his gaze sharp, filled with resentment. "You have requested this emergency session to discuss the matter of human pets," High Counselor Nix intoned. "We are all quite busy. This had better be important." Vox inhaled slowly. Esteemed colleagues, he began, his voice steady, I believe we have made a grave miscalculation regarding humans and their relationship with the species known as dogs. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Drex scoffed, the only miscalculation was allowing violent primates into the Federation before they learned basic manners. Vox's eyes fixed on him with respect. Ambassador, after thorough investigation, I believe Officer Patel's reaction, while extreme, was culturally consistent and even predictable given the nature of your comment. They are animals, Drex growled, non-sentient creatures bred for human convenience. On my world, we eat creatures of similar intelligence for breakfast. That may be so, Vox acknowledged, but on Earth, dogs are considered family members. Their emotional bonds with humans transcend mere utility. More murmurs, some intrigued, some dismissive. Representative Zakos of the Arcturian Collective leaned forward. Are you suggesting these creatures possess higher intelligence than our scans indicated? No, Vox admitted. By our scientific metrics, Earth cannons have limited problem-solving capabilities and no capacity for abstract thought. He took a breath. But my research indicates that intelligence is not the only metric that defines a bond. With a motion of his hand, a holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. Images filled the air. Dogs leading the blind, finding lost children, guarding soldiers in combat, sitting beside grieving humans, offering silent, unwavering presence. A hush fell over the room. They have evolved alongside humans for over 15,000 Earth years. Vox continued, they have developed an uncanny ability to read human emotions and respond accordingly. He hesitated, then allowed himself to say the words he had been resisting. What I witnessed firsthand was not mere biological conditioning, it was genuine connection. Ambassador Drex scoffed again, so humans have bred mindless loyalty into a lesser species that hardly justifies assaulting a diplomat over a joke. Vox's eyes darkened. The loyalty, he said carefully, goes both ways. He pressed another command. New images filled the chamber. Humans running into burning buildings to save dogs, sharing food with them, even when they themselves had none, holding their beloved companions in their final moments, their grief as deep as if they had lost a family member. Vox turned back to the committee. To humans, a joke about consuming a dog is not simply an insult, he said. It is a threat, equivalent to threatening a loved one. He let the weight of his words settle. And for the first time, the room was silent. The silence in the chamber was suffocating. The weight of Vox's words hung in the air, pressing down on each delegate as they processed what had just been presented. Ambassador Drex's mandibles twitched, his scaled fingers flexed in irritation, but he said nothing. His usual sharp retort had died on his tongue. It was High Counselor Nix who finally broke the silence. What do you propose, Commander? Her voice was calm, but there was something new beneath it, something Vox had not heard before, a quiet curiosity. Vox inhaled slowly, composing his thoughts. We cannot afford another diplomatic incident, he stated. Humans are difficult, yes, emotional, volatile, but they are also among the most rapidly advancing species we have encountered. Their potential within the Federation is undeniable. Ambassador Drexkoff but remained silent. Vox continued, if we do not wish to see another situation like the one at the embassy, we must approach human-canine relationships with the same cultural sensitivity we afford other species. I am proposing the establishment of a formal advisory council, one that will provide guidelines for all Federation personnel interacting with humans and their companions. A ripple of reaction spread through the chamber. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged skeptical glances. You expect us to issue policy regarding the treatment of animals? One of the delegates questioned. Vox's voice remained steady. Yes, because to humans, they are not just animals. A murmur of discussion followed. And then, the chamber doors slid open. Dr. Novak entered, her stride confident, but she was not alone. 6 humans followed her, each one accompanied by a dog. The reaction was immediate. Several delegates recoiled instinctively, others leaned forward in fascination. Ambassador Drex, despite his wounded pride, shifted uncomfortably as one of the larger dogs sniffed the air in his direction. What is the meaning of this? High Counselor Nix demanded. Animals are not permitted in the committee chamber. Vox remained composed. I requested special permission from Security Chief Moores. I believe first-hand experience is the best teacher. Dr. Novak smiled politely. Esteemed members of the Federation, thank you for allowing this demonstration. My colleagues and I have brought our canine partners to help illustrate what Commander Vox has been explaining. She gestured toward the first dog, a small beagle. Its handler, a customs officer, gave a quick command. The dog sniffed at a small case that had been placed on the table before turning to its human and sitting down, tail wagging. Contraband detection, Dr. Novak explained. This dog just identified a hidden substance placed inside that container. Another human stepped forward with a German Shepherd. With a series of rapid commands, the dog executed over 30 different behaviors, responding instantly to its handler's instructions in multiple languages. One of the delegates leaned forward. It understands all of that? Dr. Novak nodded, not in the way you or I would, but they associate commands with action, and their intelligence allows them to adapt, learn, and even problem solve. Vox observed the expressions around the room. Curiosity was growing. But the final demonstration was the most powerful. A therapy dog, smaller, with gentle eyes, was led to stand beside one of the more visibly anxious Federation representatives. The dog did nothing, simply sat, leaning lightly against the delegate's leg. The room remained silent as biometric readings appeared on the holographic display. Stress levels dropping, heart rate slowing. The delegate looked down at the animal. He hesitated, then slowly reached out, letting his fingers brush through the dog's soft fur. A small sigh escaped him. A moment of peace in the middle of an otherwise tense environment. And suddenly, the logic was no longer enough to deny what was in front of them. Outside the chamber, Vox let out a slow breath as the meeting adjourned. The debate had lasted hours. Some members of the Federation remained resistant, but ultimately the advisory council had been approved. It was a step, a small one, but a necessary one. Dr. Novak approached him, arms crossed, a knowing look in her eyes. You're changing, Commander, she said. Vox tilted his head. Am I? She smirked. A few weeks ago, you dismissed all of this as human irrationality. Now, you're advocating for diplomatic policies that protect dogs. Vox glanced down. His hand still held the small, worn toy Zoe had given him. He had not returned it. Dr. Novak's gaze flicked to the toy, then back to him. Have you decided what to do next? She asked. Vox's eye stalks shifted toward the distant city skyline. The question weighed on him. Yes, he had secured an official ruling. He had done what was expected of him. But was that enough? For the first time in his career, he wasn't sure. The house was just as he had left it, yet it felt different now. Bandit had recovered, though he moved slower, his body still healing. The children treated him with gentle care, their small hands brushing against his fur with newfound reverence. When Vox stepped inside, Bandit looked up, his dark eyes met Vox's. And in that moment, there was recognition. Not the cautious study of a stranger. Something else, something deeper. A flicker of familiarity, of trust. Vox stepped forward, hesitated, then slowly extended his hand. Bandit watched him for a moment, then, after a pause, pressed his nose gently against Vox's fingers. An acknowledgement. A choice. Vox exhaled, the weight in his chest loosened slightly. From the corner of the room, Zoe beamed, I told you he liked you. Vox did not respond, but he did not deny it either. He looked back down at Bandit, who had now settled against the child's side, his tail thumping softly against the floor. And for the first time since he had arrived on Earth, Vox did not feel like an observer anymore. He felt something else. Something he had never considered before. Something he was only just beginning to understand. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the view of the Galactic Federation's orbiting embassy, a sight that had once filled Vox Zarak with certainty, logic, order, predictability. These were the constants of the universe, the rules upon which civilizations were built. But tonight, as he stood at the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, he found himself unsettled. His communicator vibrated softly at his wrist, a priority message. Lieutenant Corks's voice crackled through the channel. Sir, the Cultural Exchange Committee has approved your request. Vox closed his eyes briefly. He expected this, had prepared for it, yet hearing it confirmed left an unfamiliar weight in his chest. The next step was now inevitable. He turned away from the stars and made his way to the docking bay. The transport to Earth was waiting. The Parker family had not been expecting him. When Thomas opened the door, his brows lifted in surprise, but there was no hesitation. Commander, he greeted, stepping aside. Come in. Vox hesitated at the threshold. He had been here before, had observed, had studied. But this time, he had not come as an observer. Bandit was the first to react. The dog lifted his head from his resting place on the couch, ears flicking forward as he took in the new arrival. For a moment, there was stillness, a silent exchange between species. Then, with slow, careful movements, Bandit stood. He stretched, shook out his fur, and walked straight to Vox. The children gasped softly. Vox remained still. Bandit sniffed him once, then, after a pause, pressed his head against Vox's leg. A choice. Vox exhaled, his hand lowering almost instinctively to rest against the animal's back. Zoe grinned. He likes you. The weight in Vox's chest loosened just slightly. Thomas crossed his arms, tilting his head. Didn't expect to see you back so soon. Vox straightened. I have made a decision. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Oh? Vox's mandibles flexed. There was no need for pretense, no reason to frame this as mere academic curiosity anymore. I wish to better understand the human-canine bond, he said carefully. Not through observation, but through experience. A beat of silence. Then, a slow, knowing smile spread across Thomas's face. I see. Raina stepped forward, a hand resting lightly on Zoe's shoulder. Are you saying what I think you're saying, Commander? Vox exhaled. I wish to participate in the cultural exchange program as a temporary guardian of an Earth canine. A sharp inhale from Zoe. Jamie sat upright, eyes wide. Bandit thumped his tail against the floor. And then, Zoe squealed, running to grab her father's arm, practically bouncing on her toes. Can we? Can he? Thomas laughed, rubbing his chin. Well, that's not up to us. He turned to Vox, expression serious. Commander, if you're really going to do this, you need to understand something. Vox straightened. I have reviewed all necessary documentation. That's not what I mean, Thomas interrupted. His voice lacked its usual humor. This was something deeper. He gestured to Bandit. This isn't just about care and responsibility. This isn't just science. If you take in a dog, you aren't testing something. His voice softened. You're making a promise. Vox stilled. A promise? Not a contract, not a duty. A choice. Just like the choice Bandit had made the night of the break-in. The choice humans made, over and over again, for creatures that could never speak their language but somehow understood them better than their own kind ever could. Zoe tugged at his sleeve. I think you'd be a good dog dad, Commander. Vox blinked down at her. Dog dad? The phrase was absurd, the very concept nonsensical. And yet, something in him warmed at the words. A new kind of weight settled in his chest, not discomfort, not unease. Something else entirely. I will not take this choice lightly, he said at last. Thomas studied him, then nodded. All right. He turned, motioning for Jamie to follow. Together, father and son disappeared into the other room. Minutes passed. Then Jamie returned, and in his arms, a puppy. Smaller than Bandit, fluffier, its fur a mix of gray and white, its ears too big for its head, eyes that sparkled with curiosity. The tiny creature squirmed, trying to get a better look at the world around it. Jamie held it out toward Vox. This is Scout. Vox looked at the animal, then back at Thomas. The human smiled. He's been waiting for a home. Vox inhaled slowly. The decision had already been made. He stepped forward, extending his arms. Jamie gently placed the small, warm body into his grasp. For the first time in his life, Vox held something fragile, something that needed him. Scout let out a soft yawn, then, without hesitation, curled up against Vox's chest, trusting him, choosing him. The warmth in Vox's chest expanded, and for the first time, he understood. This was not about logic. It never had been. This was family. And he had just become part of it. The Federation's Earth Embassy was eerily silent in the early hours of the morning. The artificial lights hummed softly overhead, casting long shadows across the pristine corridors. Vox Zorak walked with careful precision, every step measured, every movement controlled, but despite his usual discipline, something felt different, or rather, he felt different. The bundle of warmth cradled in his arms stirred slightly, letting out a small, contented sigh. Scout. The tiny canine had settled against him as if this arrangement had always been intended, as if he had known from the moment he had been placed in Vox's hands that this was right. Vox still did not fully understand how such certainty could exist between two beings so biologically incompatible. But he could not deny that it was there. And for the first time, he was not sure if he wanted to explain it. Lieutenant Corks was waiting for him near the entrance to his quarters. His mandibles clicked rapidly in what Vox recognized as unrestrained shock. Sir? Vox barely paused as he moved past him. Not now, Lieutenant. Corks hurried after him, voice laced with disbelief. Is that a juvenile canine in your possession? Vox sighed, stepping into his quarters and securing the door before facing his second in command. Yes. Corks blinked his multiple eyes as if waiting for some kind of elaboration. When none came, he hesitated. Sir, may I ask, why? Vox exhaled a long, controlled breath. Because he had felt something stir within him when he held Scout for the first time. Because despite all his training, all his logic, all his understanding of diplomacy and interspecies relations, there was something undeniably real about the connection forming between himself and this small, helpless creature. Because for reasons he could not articulate, he wanted this. But instead of explaining any of that, Vox simply said, "It is for research purposes." Corks's mandibles twitched in what could only be barely concealed skepticism. Of course, sir. Scout let out a small yawn and nestled further into Vox's chest. Corks watched the motion, then very, very carefully took a step backward. I will update the personnel files accordingly, he said quickly, and ensure that a suitable environment is prepared for the creature's care. Vox nodded. See that you do. Corks hesitated a moment longer, then muttered something about recalibrating security measures before making a quick retreat. Vox stood in silence for a long moment after he left. Scout stirred again, tiny paws stretching against the fabric of Vox's uniform before settling once more. A small, fragile thing, trusting him without hesitation. Vox lowered himself into the nearest chair, carefully shifting the pup into his lap. He had faced warlords, mediated interstellar conflicts, and endured countless high-pressure negotiations across the galaxy. Yet somehow, this tiny creature had undone him completely, and he was not afraid of it. For the first time in his life, Vox was not afraid of something he did not understand. Instead, he welcomed it. The weeks passed in a blur of quiet adjustments and unexpected revelations. Scout was not merely a passive presence in his life, he was a force of nature in his own right. At first, Vox had expected the arrangement to be one of structured responsibility, feeding schedules, exercise routines, carefully monitored interactions. But reality had other plans. Scout did not merely exist within Vox's quarters. He took over, paws tapping softly against the sleek metallic floors as he explored every inch of his new home. Tiny claws scraping against furniture he was expressly instructed not to chew, warm, unrelenting eyes staring expectantly at Vox whenever food was consumed in his presence. And the sounds. Oh, the sounds. Soft whines when he wanted attention, playful barks that echoed far louder than something his size should have been capable of producing, the occasional contented sigh as he curled up against Vox's side during late nights of diplomatic briefings. It was chaotic. It was unpredictable. It was absolutely infuriating at times. And yet, Vox found himself adjusting far more easily than he ever could have anticipated. There was an undeniable rhythm to it all. Scout demanded nothing from him but presence. And for reasons he still did not fully understand, Vox gave it freely. His subordinates had quickly learned not to question the change. Lieutenant Corks had all but accepted defeat when it came to trying to maintain a sense of order in Vox's quarters. The personnel stationed at the embassy had gone from whispering behind his back to offering polite nods whenever he passed by, with Scout trotting faithfully at his side. And most telling of all, Ambassador Drex, the very same Drex who had once dismissed human attachment to animals as irrational sentimentality, had been spotted multiple times sneaking treats to Scout when he thought no one was looking. Vox had chosen not to comment on it. Yet, it wasn't until his next visit to the Parker residence that the weight of his decision truly settled. Jamie was the first to notice when Vox arrived. His eyes immediately dropped to Scout, who was now sitting attentively at Vox's side. The boy's face lit up. "You kept him." Vox hesitated, then nodded, "Yes." Jamie turned, yelling toward the house, "So, come see this." There was a thunderous patter of tiny feet as Zoe sprinted out the door, nearly tripping in her excitement. When she saw Scout, she let out a high-pitched shriek of joy. Then, without hesitation, she flung her arms around Vox's midsection. Vox froze. This was not protocol. This was not standard human interaction in diplomatic settings. Yet, he did not move away. Zoe pulled back, her face practically glowing. "I knew you'd be a good dog, Dad." Vox glanced down at Scout. The pup was staring up at him with that same undeniable trust. The same silent understanding that had existed from the very beginning. Vox exhaled slowly. He had never considered himself a father figure of any kind. And yet, Zoe's words did not feel wrong. They did not feel incorrect. If anything, they felt earned. Raina smiled knowingly as she leaned against the doorway. "Welcome to the family, Commander." Vox hesitated for only a moment before responding. "Thank you." And for the first time, he truly deeply meant it. The Federation's annual Cultural Exchange Summit was a spectacle unlike any other. Representatives from countless species gathered within the Grand Chamber, the air thick with formality, tradition, and more than ever curiosity. But this year, something was different. The murmurs were not of political alliances or trade negotiations. They were of them, the humans, and their dogs. Commander Vox Zerak stood at the center of it all, Scout at his side, sitting attentively, tail wagging lightly against the polished floor. The program had been a resounding success. 12 diplomats from 7 different species had participated, 15 dogs had been assigned to Federation representatives. And against all expectations, something extraordinary had happened. The bonds had formed, not just between humans and their cannons, but between aliens and the creatures they had once dismissed as mere domesticated animals. Even Ambassador Drex, who had once so proudly ridiculed the very concept of human-pet relationships, now stood with Daisy, a golden-furred Labrador retriever, positioned comfortably at his side. He had, of course, insisted that he was merely continuing his research. But the way his hand lingered on Daisy's head, the way his body had subtly shifted to shield her when the large chamber doors had clanged open unexpectedly. It was clear to everyone that this was no longer an experiment. This was real. High Counselor Nix approached the podium, her translucent tendrils shifting in ceremonial patterns as she addressed the assembled delegates. "Today marks a significant milestone in Federation history," she announced. "When humans joined our community, they brought with them a practice we initially dismissed as primitive, sentimental." She turned, gesturing toward the assembled diplomats and their canine companions. What began as a curiosity has become one of the most successful diplomatic initiatives in recent memory. The K9 Partnership Program has not only improved relations and deepened understanding, but has created bridges between species previously separated by vast biological and cultural barriers. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. And then, the words that would change everything. Today, we formally recognize dogs as the first non-sentient species to receive protected cultural heritage status under Federation law. The applause was deafening. And in the midst of it all, a few distinct barks echoed through the chamber. Scout turned his head upward, glancing at Vox as if awaiting confirmation. Vox exhaled slowly, kneeling beside him. "You have altered the course of galactic diplomacy, little one." Scout simply thumped his tail in response. Daisy let out a joyful bark, and to everyone's shock, even Ambassador Drex let out a deep chuckle as he muttered, "Ridiculous little creatures." But there was no bite to his words, only warmth. That night, as the summit wound down and the guests dispersed to their respective worlds, Vox sent a final transmission, a message to the Parker family. He attached a recording of the ceremony. "Congratulations. Bandit says woofa, which I believe translates to I told you so. The kids want to know when Uncle Vox and Scout are visiting next. Zoe says Scout needs to try her new peanut butter dog treats." Vox read the words several times before responding. "Scout and I will be there soon." And as he powered down the terminal, he looked down at the small, warm body curled up against his side. Scout blinked up at him sleepily, paws twitching as if running in a dream. And Vox, the once detached, ever logical commander, allowed himself to smile. Because he understood now. This was not about instinct or duty or even logic. It was about choice. The choice to stand by one another, to protect, to trust, to love. And that was what made humanity's greatest gift to the stars so powerful. Not their technology, not their intelligence, but their capacity for connection. Across species, across galaxies, across every divide imaginable. Vox reached down, resting his hand lightly against Scout's back. The pup stirred, sighing contentedly. Vox closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. A once lonely commander, a rescued dog, and an entire universe still waiting to be discovered. Together. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the Federation's Earth embassy, a reminder of the vast, infinite universe still waiting to be explored. But Vox's Arak no longer saw it as he once had. He was no longer merely an observer of strange species and their peculiar customs. He was part of something now. Something bigger than logic, something deeper than diplomacy. Scout shifted beside him, pressing his small, warm body against Vox's side, a silent but certain reminder that the most profound connections often came in the most unexpected forms. The universe was vast. But tonight, Vox was home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more cinematic storytelling just like this. And remember, loyalty, love, and family come in all forms, sometimes in the shape of a small wagging tail. See you in the next story.